has been
Hi everyone, welcome. Thanks so kindly for joining us. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. My name is Car Johnson. I'm the event coordinator for Green Apple. And tonight I am very happy to welcome Ananda Lima for the release. Yeah, you were loud. Yeah, great. Please do. This is the release of her debut story collection, Craft, Stories I Wrote for the Devil. Let's give one more hand. Oh wait, I can't read any of this. Hold on. Oh, so much better. Oh, perfect. Now I have devil vision.
Devil vision.
Ananda is joined tonight in conversation by Jon Hickey. Let's give a hand for Jon. Thank you both so much for joining us. This is very exciting. Jon, I'll tell you more about Jon momentarily, but Jon, I'm very happy to have you on this side of the microphone. This is very exciting. Oh. And Ananda, this is, we got to host the launch for your poetry collection virtually in 2021, I think, in 2021. So now we're here in San Francisco for the first time for a new book, and time is marching forward, and it's totally wild, and I'm really glad to have you here in person. And thank you all for joining us in person as well. It is very exciting. So before, pardon me. I have a little bit of business before we get to the heart of the evening. Thank you for joining us here in person and also online. Hello, online audience. I'm waving to a camera in case you cannot see me. We are broadcasting from San Francisco. We open each of our events with a land acknowledgement. We are operating on unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land, and I mention this to say that you, as much as one can acknowledge that we are operating on stolen land, I think action is required as part of that acknowledgement, and so we encourage you to donate either your time or monetary means to an Indigenous organization each time you hear a land acknowledgement. If you're interested, at the back desk, we have information on how to get in touch with the Ramaytush Ohlone Land Trust if you're interested in how to participate in this project of rematriation. Very brief business. Now is a good time to silence your cell phones if you have not already. Picture taking, I have been told, is fine, even encouraged. If you would like to, you are welcome to, but just don't take a call in the middle of the event. That's not cool. Please do check out our full event calendar online at greenapplebooks.com. We have a really great season ahead of us, including the event you are currently attending. The restroom is behind me. It is available after the event and not during the event for obvious reasons. If you need to know how to get there, do let me know and I'll gladly help you. We have copies of Craft available at the front register. You can find them there. If you've been here before, you've certainly heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, you support the writers who put so much work into making these books, and then you get to have a book, which might be the best part. So if you are able, we always appreciate it. Remember, Ananda is here all the way from Chicago. This is a unique opportunity to get a book signed. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the writers who are joining us tonight. First, Jon Hickey is a writer in San Francisco. His stories have appeared in the Virginia Quarterly Review, Gulf Coast, and the Massachusetts Review. His debut novel, this is what I was telling you about, people, Big Chief, is going to come out in 2025, April 8th, 2025, to be exact. And is it today that the pre-order link went live?
Yeah, exactly.
It's live. The pre-order link is live today, which is pretty cool to have him here. And the pre-order link is live. So you can, if you're interested, you can pre-order through us here at the register this evening. You can also go online on our website and pre-order there at your convenience. But excuse me, I will let you take over momentarily, but I will say, while I do have a microphone in my hand, that pre-ordering someone's book is extremely helpful, especially to a debut author. The early numbers of a book during, the sales numbers during publication, that first week of publication, are very, very helpful to the success of a book overall. So if you're able to get those pre-orders, and it's always, always helpful. It's never not a good thing. So think about it. With that being said, let's give one more hand for Jon Hickey. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce this next author. Ananda Lima is a poet, translator, and fiction writer born in Brazil, now living in Chicago. She's the author of the poetry collection Motherland, which was the winner of the Hudson Prize. Her work has appeared in the American Poetry Review, Poets.org, Canon Review Online, Gulf Coast, and elsewhere. She has been awarded the inaugural WIP Fellowship by Latinx in Publishing, and her book, Craft, is her fiction debut and the reason we are here tonight. Let's give one more hand for Ananda Lima.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here in person. It was so lovely to do it online too. You're being so welcoming and lovely, and it's so great to be here. And it's so great to see everybody here. This is super fun. And it's so great to be here with Jon. It was always so lovely to see him. And I'm very, very excited about the pre-orders being up to date. And the cover looks amazing. So yeah, put your pre-orders, through the website. It's very good. I just checked. It's like all there. It's great. Yes. It looks great. And it's just Big Chief. So if you search that on Green Apple's website, it'll come up. Yeah, so great. Nice. So I'm going to read just a little bit, and the book has it's a short story collection, but it has a meta frame of the writer of those stories. And she's like a Brazilian writer, like curly hair. And she had a thing, in her 20s with the devil. It was just right? It happens. But they kept in touch, it's been good. And I'm going to start with the first paragraph of the first story. So it's not the first paragraph of the book, because the book starts with the writer. But that's the first story. And it's called Rapture. You probably can't tell by looking at me now, but once, back in my 20s, I slept with the devil. We met at a Halloween party in a closed-down store space in Manhattan, Union Square in 1981. I was nursing my third snake bite in the corner. Silhouettes danced to memorabilia, backlit by a makeshift red and blue neon installation stuck to a crumbly brick wall. The devil was sitting alone on a beat-up brown corduroy sofa. I was Inauguration Nancy Reagan, a tighter version of the red Adolfo dress, black gloves, a wig between chestnut brown and dirty blonde, topped with a red pillbox hat. Have you seen that outfit, anybody? Yeah? That's what I keep telling people. I'm like, there's so many things you can say about Nancy Reagan. However, I must admit that outfit was very good. And I don't know if you've seen the stamps that came out of the post office last year or something. They were available last year. I don't know if they came out last year, but it was Nancy Reagan in red. So I bought a bunch of them. And I was like, I'm going to send this to all my friends. But then I remembered, the book was not out, and, people just think I'm crazy. So I still have them. One day, maybe. But yes, so back to the devil. He wore an ill-fitting suit, a faded orange wig, and some bad foundation. I walked up to him and asked what he was, yelling over the music. He said he was the future. I told him his costume sucked. He smiled and said he was often misunderstood, scanning the room as if hoping for a specific somebody else to show up. I began spinning the first thread of his story. A woman in a white dress, a cheap Halloween bride costume, would walk in, holding a veil in her hand. I imagined him watching as the woman looked for someone too, but not him. As I thought this, the devil nodded, almost imperceptibly, as if privately approving of something, but continued looking at the room with that slight sadness, that want. I recognized some of what I'd been carrying inside, mirrored on his face. All right, so I'll do maybe one more paragraph. I keep forgetting my books, the tabs and everything. I'd always lose the book in the last minute. So I always have to start from scratch. Let's see, I will just pick another little paragraph. I know, I'll pick this one. Okay, so this is a ghost story. It's a story in the collection. And in the story, the writer writes the story about a trickster character that kind of tricks his roommates. But the people reading the story don't understand the character as a trickster. They think that the things he says are true. So this paragraph is just after she talks to a bunch of people and to her mom about this problem. At least it wasn't just me who saw through my character's lies. But later, I checked with 2 more of my friends. They both thought the stories the man told his roommates were true too. And my mother, the only person on my team, had not even read the story, written in English. In the end, I changed it to fit the prevalent reading. And I did that by changing nothing. No edits to the words printed on the hibiscus tea stained manuscript. The change happened only in my mind. For a moment, I wish the change would have happened in the reader's mind instead. But it seemed clear by now that I was only wishing for that what I couldn't have. So I decided that yes, now all the stories the guide told were true, including the ghost one. In fiction, I'd initially thought was a little far-fetched, but still realistic. And that was the end of the question, at least for now. A few weeks later, my mother called me. You need to do something about this ghost. Ghost? I opened and closed the kitchen drawer where I usually left my keys. I was late to work. Yeah, ghost. Mom, what are you talking about? We believe in ghosts now? Not ghosts now? Not on the table or the counter. Mark must have taken them by mistake again. Whether you believe it or not doesn't matter. It's here, haunting me. What are you trying to say, Mom? Maybe she really thought she had seen a ghost? Was that possible? Are you feeling okay? Maybe put on Dad or Miguel. I'm fine, and no, I can't put them on. Your father is out, and your brother, she sighed, is traveling with Juliana again. She sucked her teeth. Well, even if he were here, you'd have to help me with this one, not him. Why? Because this ghost is yours. I mean, her voice wavered. It's you. Okay, thank you.
This is an amazing book. I mean, can I point out something before we start getting into the actual stories? But I thought I almost missed it. But the dedication is you'll see it's for the devil. I wouldn't be able to pull that one off. This is awesome. This is great. I thought we might start out talking a little bit about the title, which is a great title, Craft, Stories I Wrote for the Devil. Because when I first heard it, when I first read it, what it brings to mind is, those of us who've been in the writers' workshops and that sort of thing is like craft, like the textbooks or the guidebooks that we have. So I was kind of reading that as like a takeoff on that, almost like a parody. And then the stories I wrote for the devil, just this diabolical twist on it. So that maybe you could talk a little bit about how you arrived at that title, or what you were trying to get out of that title.
I love that. So exactly, right? Like as a writer, you hear about craft. You're always talking about craft. And some of these stories, a lot of them, at least some of the time, some parts of them, I was doing an MFA while I was writing. So it's craft all day. And a lot of that stuff is very, very helpful, but a lot of it you're like, I don't know about that. So craft was very much in my mind, but I had written maybe a few of the stories, not the whole thing, but once I had like some that I could put together, I saw that a lot, they had a lot, they were talking to each other a lot, that this was a together thing. And then I thought about it, and then when the word craft came up, like that, I was like, oh, this is the book. This is craft. It has craft, like witchcraft, or craft, like the other craft, and often both. And that really, really helped me. That's when I saw this as a book and as this book. Like, even if it wasn't finished, I understood this was the book. But I was very much playing with that and kind of having a lot of fun with trolling the craft a little bit. Yes. Beginning of starting it, like almost all the stories about writers, right? Which is not supposed to. Yeah.
But no, it really is the perfect title. I
So
thought.
but the devil thing came later. First I had craft, and then at some point, first I had craft as the book, and then at some point the meta layer emerged, and then after the meta layer emerged, I decided the devil story would be the meta layer, and then the stories I wrote for the devil like kind of completed it. That's when I was very happy. Yeah.
This is a fascinating process because that's what I'm thinking. What I like about this is the intricacy. The attention to that detail, the sort of frame of the writer, and these sections are kind of untitled, but they have like the little thing. I don't know what you call it, but you'll see when you read the book. But yeah, was the frame always there, or did you write around the stories that you already had? Like what was? I know you just touched on it a little bit, but like, are some of these stories older than others, or?
Yeah, so I feel like I had first I had just the stories on their own, then I had the title, and I had not all the stories, but I had a bunch of stories before I had the frame, and I love meta stuff, as you can probably tell. love meta stuff, and I always enjoyed it as a reader. I love the friction that it creates. So I was going down on the meta thing on the stories a lot. There was a lot of writers revising, writers writing, and I was like, oh, I need to go up, and like I need to go the other direction, and then it's gonna be very muddled, So then that is when the frame came up, after I had a few of them and observed the meta thing. But the funny thing is that, like, I feel like this happens a lot to me anyways. Way back in the day, I had a novel I was writing, and it was fine, and it was getting me fun things. I don't know, going to conferences or whatever, or getting into the MFA. But I was very bored with that novel. And I was like, this is not doing it for me. And I had this thought, the only way to save this novel is to have it inside another novel where somebody makes fun of this novel. So I had that thought, and I forgot about that thought forever until like an interview after this book was out already, And I was like, oh yeah, I did think about that. And that was way before the frame. But it was like a dormant idea that came up more when I had the stories. Not all the stories, but some of the stories. And I kind of decided to go the other direction of the meta stuff.
So was that like fast to write, or was that just sort of came naturally after you had all of the pieces? It
was fun. It was fun to write, and it was a very cool discovery, because I was doing this thing and it's not like I had a clear model of what I wanted to do in mind. I mean, I have books that I love with frames or with the writer writing, but it wasn't exactly that. And when I started writing them, what I noticed about the frame is that it had to be the right thickness. It could not be too thick, because then the novel takes over. And I was like, no, I don't want the novel to take over. I want it to be still a short story collection with, if it became a novel, it would be a whole different thing, So I had to do a lot of push, like thinning it out, thinning it out, to find the level where people are, and by people maybe me, right? Like are happy with the amount of information and they don't want more. So you have to make it thinner, because if you give people a lot, they want more, So there was a lot of playing with the thickness of the frame. And there was also a very fun time when my editor, who I love, she knew what I was doing, and I knew what I was doing. But my poor agent, who came later, like I actually was out. She's like, "What is happening? What are these things?" And I'm like, "No, I promise, it's something. It's something." You know, because the stories they made sense, but the frame at some point it was like going back and forth, and she's like, what is this? But eventually, when I found the right level, she understood that. She's like, oh, that all makes sense now. Yeah.
I think eventually, that frame becomes just such an emotional core of the book on its own, and it kind of takes you by surprise as you go through. The part of it is in here. So when I met you way back in Sewanee 2017, way back when, I knew you were a poet. That your first book was a poetry collection, Motherland.
That's right.
And I was thinking that when we're in the MFA workshop world, there's these artificial distinctions made. You're a poet, you're a fiction writer, you're a nonfiction writer, all that sort of thing. But clearly you can do all of it, right? I think so. Anyways, so there's this artificial separation of these sorts of things. So when you're approaching the stories, when you're approaching the fiction, is it informed by the poetry? Or do they work off of each other?
Yeah, I love this question because when I feel like I was doing an MFA for fiction, but most people, whoever was not literally in my class, thought I was doing it for poetry, and the whole world thought I was doing it. And some people, when this just came out, just like today, you had your pre-order and the cover was so cool. When I did that for myself, they're like, "Wait, you write fiction?" Yeah.
You're not allowed to write
fiction.
Fiction.
What is going on? But I feel like I think I like the thing that is most natural to me is poetry, and the fiction is really also important, but it takes more tending. I need to invest. The poetry just kind of sprouts, and of course you can work on it and everything, but it's the most natural path for me. But I feel like for this book in particular, I think my poetry and my fiction, they're pretty different. Some fiction writers that I know, they meet more in the middle, they have more prose poems and they have sparse fiction. I'm more very skinny poems over here with lots of line breaks and and very, very long sentences over here. So they're very different. But I do feel like they satisfy different things. But for this book in particular, because this book is I don't know, pretty weird. The poetry really helped. I feel like it helped me with the frame, with thinking about how thick things should be. It helped me trust the reader to give them gaps and not to take them by the hand on every single little thing. It helped me with having a love for playing with form and play outside of just the plot. That kind of thing. So I think I brought all these things from poetry. I think there's fiction writers who do those things even not being poets, but I think in my case, the poetry experience really helped. And the other thing that poetry experience really helped, I love the order that my books came out, is that poetry is a very small world. It's not going to be like an opera or whatever. And I did that, and it was beautiful, and it was lovely, and so I wasn't too concerned if it's like a niche thing. I was like, no, this is, even if it's a niche thing, it's going to be amazing. So I think it gave me a lot of freedom coming from the background.
So, when you pick the order of the stories, what was the thought behind how this is your lead-off story? I mean, it was perfect. I thought that order was perfect. But how do you come to that decision? Like, was it yours, or was it through collaboration with the editor or the agent?
Yeah, I feel like at some point I had some order that was roughly there, even before the frame. It was decent, but everybody, including me, knew it wasn't right yet. And then when the frame came in, it really helped because then I knew where it would exist. And then I did a little bit of shifting. And it was mostly very intuitive, like thinking of the shape of what you feel as you read the stories. But I also think it ended up, through this intuitive process, a lot of the earlier stories a little bit more grounded, a little bit more, what's going on. And slowly you kind of like go, okay, we're gonna do this weird thing right now. So I think it's a little bit more grounded in the world of the writer. And I feel like towards the end, we trust more that you're okay knowing, having a little bit of an openness to it. But it was mostly just sort of seeing the shape of how things make you feel and seeing the frame that would go in between. Yeah, but it took a lot of, I think roughly it was there, but it took a little bit of rearranging in a couple of spots just to get it right.
All right. But what I was struck by was that in that order, like there's this sort of natural evolution of an artist, not just a writer, but obviously it's the writer. The last story is not necessarily writing centric. So like I just sort of like looked at it as like this is just art, So I'm curious, what was your evolution as an artist? When was it? When was the first time that you felt like this was what you wanted to do?
Oh, I love that, and I love what you said too, because thinking about the last story, that was one that I was like, this has to be the last one, because of where it is with the art, right? So I feel like. I think the last several years have been very wonderful in that way. Like I was just talking to some writers before, and we were talking about how we have not been writing, and I'm like, like maybe for a long time, and that used to stress me out much more. But now I feel like I know myself much better, and I'm much more relaxed, which means I can enjoy my life better. I know that there's a lot of movement. I'm a very chaotic writer. I am not a person who's gonna write every day. That's just not gonna happen for me. The difference is now I don't stress, and I trust that it's gonna. The rhythm of it, which is very good. But I feel like this book in particular was very wonderful for me as a writer, because it's something but I really understood that if I like something, it means somebody likes it, So if you go to a lot of workshops and things like that, and MFA, you learn a lot, but you also end up having a lot of hang-ups, and hearing the voices of your people or whatever, your friends or your nemesis or whatever it is. And I really understood that I had to hear my own voice. And if I think something's fun, nobody can tell me that it's not fun for anybody, because it's fun for me. So at least one person likes it, So I think that kind of thinking, I really understood it doing this book, because I let myself do the stuff that I like in it.
That's a really good answer. It's a really good way to look at it, I think. And then there is a story, Idle Hands, right? It's almost entirely critique letters from a workshop. How many people there's several different characters. It's just wonderful, because you're speaking in all these different voices, and they're all those voices in workshop. This person, the characters that you run into, and everything like that. So that was one of my favorites. maybe getting back to some of the the content of it. I'm struck by how you go about portraying the devil, and like our notions of the devil as this I think it's kind of like like a Christian-centric sort of way of looking at like, oh, the devil's evil and the devil's the personification of bad things and that sort of thing. But in other cultures, that character is more of a trickster character, right? That it's a cautionary tale or like a figure of comedy, an agent of chaos, that sort of thing. So how are you approaching that? When you made this character, I guess what were maybe some of the influences? What were some of the considerations you were making?
Yeah, so I ended up really loving my dad, like hanging out with him.
He's a lot of fun.
He's so nice. He's chill, right? He's a there's moments of compassion,
right? That you just sort of take you by surprise,
right?
But yeah, he's funny. He's a little chaotic,
fun, right? Don't always know what he's up to, but he's like pretty. Yes. Yeah, that was so much fun with the devil. We in Brazil, we have Christian-based inherited devil, right? Like, so the basis of the devil we see there is from like the Catholic background, but it evolved within the country. And in folk Brazilian art, which I'm very exposed to, and the visuals are very cool too. Usually you have the stories about the devil, which are humorous, and usually it's supposed to be that the devil is tricking people, but usually the people trick the devil. Like they sell their souls and then they find a way to not to pay back. And a lot of times in the drawings, the devil is smaller than the people, which is kind of like undercuts that very terrifying effect. It's like a weird little gremlin-like creature, So I had that exposure, and I did think about having like some, like some sort of suit and tie kind of devil figure, hooking up with somebody in their 20s, like way back, and I forgot about that idea too. But I somehow started reading a lot about the devil, and in particular, I read these people who did just theory about the devil from medieval times to today. There's one guy in particular that he has like 2 books on the devil. They're fantastic, and they trace from medieval times to now, even the secularization, when they don't call it the devil anymore, but it's kind of the same way of talking. And it was just fascinating storytelling wise to see how the story is used. So it was used first by people who were undergoing a lot of suffering to understand how could people do that to them. So it was at some point a figure that was used by people who were oppressed, but very quickly it turned and it started being used to associate different groups with the devil to sort of marginalize them or, do all sorts of bad things. So if you're talking about narrative and craft and writing, it's just such a interesting figure. And there's also a lot of revisionism, like there's a lot of looking back and saying this is the devil when that creature was not the devil before. So storytelling wise, it's a very interesting figure. And then you kind of I wrote a lot of this. I mean, all times are kind of terrible, right, but the Trumpiers were very loud. Right, the terribleness continued, but it was just very loud on your face, and I felt it when I walked out in the street. Like it was a very loud feeling, right? So hearing the stuff like the migrant caravan and reading about the devil, the stories went very well together, and you feel kind of a sympathy for this creature. And another thing that is interesting is the amount of sweat it takes to understand the damnation, right? Like it's like St. Augustine is like sweating buckets trying to make it work, Like, well, what exactly did he do and when and why is that worse than this and that? So so the figure became very interesting and I felt for it, but all of that was there. But when I started writing him, I really thought about how well these people who did theory do the facts, and I explain how it works. And I was like, if I don't need to do that because they have already done it. And it would be bad if I do it. You know? I'm not a person. It would be like so rambly, you know. So I really decided to let that work about the facts of what happened to be other people's work, and to just to use the sort of stimulation and excitement I had reading to make my devil and let go of all the facts and let him be whatever he wanted to be. And that's how he ended up this way.
Right.
You know?
Well, I feel it becomes very, unique to this book.
Exactly.
Right?
It's freer. Yeah.
I think that what occurred to me too is that the devil is, at certain points, no spoilers. It's just that it's like he's writing, or the actions that he takes kind of resemble writing and editing and revising, like the world. Like, something happens in the story where it's like, oh, this is how it could go, right? This is, I believe this was from the first story. So that's fascinating stuff. What else are you working on? What's next? I know that's a hard question and fraught question sometimes, but what do you want to do next?
So I can say it, but it's like telling people their dreams, So apologies. It's like, oh my gosh. But I have a poetry collection that has been going on for a while on vision. And that's gonna keep its steady pace. And then I started working on a novel, which is going to be, there's two threads to it. One is between Chicago and Iowa City, and that drive, which I think is very trippy because it's a very, very flat landscape. So it looks almost like an abstraction, like somebody drew. It doesn't look real, So there's going to be a ghost that is amnesiac that lives in there. And then there's another thread in Chicago, which is an architect, a woman architect who's a junior architect who loves mid-century buildings. And there will be a mid-century building will be the key to bringing this ghost home. So that's kind of what's going to happen. But it's going to take a while.
Did we want to open it up to questions, I think? The audience?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
It's forming.
I love it. I love it. Give it some time to brew. Yes.
Did you have any books close by while you were writing this that offered inspiration?
I love that. So I have some that were close by or were like just very alive in my mind. And then I ended up reading others after I've done that I feel belong in the same friendship or something. One of my favorites that I love so much is The Master and Margarita, because it's just wild and so fun. And also I love that the ideologies of that book and this book are almost mirrors of each other. So Master and Margarita was, the environment there is a very oppressive, atheistic environment where you cannot have religious beliefs, and I'm coming from one where I feel like I don't have them and I have to have them. So they were kind of mirrored each other, but they both have this very cool devil. So I really like that. Also, they're both meta, so I love that book. Other ones like Clarice Lispector has The Hour of the Star has a writer writing a character that lives in the story. Ben Lerner, 1004, all the autofictionists, which people don't like, but I really like it. And then also one that is not very directly, but it has something that I talk to is The Brief History of Seven Killings by Marlon James, because it has this very heavily researched associated to the truth factor in it, but it has ghosts, so it mixes those two and it kind of messes up the reader a little bit that way. So those are some. Now, some that came after that I love is Bunny by Mona Awad. She didn't write it after, but I read it after. I love it, and it has workshop as well. It's a great, great workshop. Like if you go to a workshop, I need to give you this book. And Fictions by Ashley Honeysett. It's a new book that has stories within the stories, and a writer writing them too. Thank you.
In the back?
Yeah, so you mentioned that poetry comes easier to you. So I'm just wondering if you were writing poetry while putting together this book. Like, were you able to work in two different projects, or do you only focus on the book?
I love that question because always I want to have at least two things going on. For me, I really understand now that that's what I need. If I had just one, that is just too much pressure, too stressful. But when I have at least two or more, if I'm getting annoyed or stuck with one thing, I'm like, ooh, let me sneak this other thing. And then when it gets annoying, I feel the same way about the thing I just ran out. So to me, it really works. And I always like having both. Yeah.
But then what happens when they're all annoying?
That's the thing. Then you have to come up with some new project. Yes.
Take up new art.
But then it takes forever, right? Because you're like this. And it just takes forever. But that's okay. That's just the way it's going to be for me. So.
Can you tell me, random?
Random is good.
Yeah, Gremlins 2.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, because I was reading it, and did people actually watch that in the theater? Because
I did.
Really? Because I thought it was just that movie that you see a million times on cable.
That too. Yes.
For us, it was that.
Yes. It was very much that, but we didn't have cable, so it was the public television. So it really was one of those movies, which there weren't many, right?
Yeah.
So you just watch over and over. But there were a few movies, not too many, that I watched in the theater before they went on TV. And that was one of them, which I'm so happy about, because they have the gremlins go in the projector room and they rip the movie and they're like, yeah. So I was in the theater for that. That was so good. But I love that movie. I try not to watch it recently, not to destroy my feeling of it, so that I can have the imagination. But there's a skit on YouTube. If you type skit Gremlins 2, it's brilliant. I may write a thing about that skit. It's so good. But Gremlins 2 is brilliant and it's so fun, and they did whatever they wanted. They just did not care. If they wanted to do something, they did it. So that was a very big motto for me. And it's meta, it's postmodern, it has it goes above itself. And it's just hilarious. And so that is all there. And on top of that, for the stories where I was writing the Gremlins 2, it has this immigrant fear. And I think the Gremlins really work very well for that, because they are real menaces, but there's such a fear that they'll get out there, right? So that is we cannot let them out. And that works very well. That current works very well for this story where they show up here. Yeah.
I feel like you could get the VHS copy and an old TV, and then that would be kind of how you experienced it.
That'd be great.
Yeah, like I said, I've seen that movie a million times. It's Gremlins 1. I don't have any memory of. Why is 2 the most fun? But yeah, I ran into it in the book, and the narrator says something about, Americans can't appreciate its brilliance. Yeah. I want to know more about that one. Yeah, I get it, but
I love it. It's because it was not Americans in general. It's the ones that were in the shop where she was. Mm-hmm. And that is funny to me because it feels that movie, Back to the Future, The Fly, but especially Gremlins too. They feel like my movies. They're like my movies, So then, especially as you get older, right? I wore a Gremlins Christmas sweater last year, and I went to like this event, and people were like, "Wow, I love these goblins." I'm like, "What goblins?" It's the gremlins. Wow, they're very intense. I'm like, "No, these are the gremlins." And they're like, "What?" So you feel like this stuff is your stuff, but when you're in America, right, it's like American things, but it's like, no, this is more mine than this other American person's. But it's yours too, right? But that was kind of what I was talking about there. But also Tropicalia is a thing that you don't have to know about as a reader of the book. But it's a Brazilian movement that happened in the 60s that was very much about absorbing culture. In the 60s was American culture and taking what you want. So it wasn't a rejection from a colonizing culture. It was take what you want from it and make it yours and claim it and take it. So that is what Tropicalia was. So I do a lot of that in the book. And one of the things that gets that done is gremlins too.
You just pull like a thread like that, seemingly like, oh, I'm just curious about it, but then there's so much. That's what's so good about the book is that it's so dense with that, like the meaning. So
the little Easter eggs.
Yes.
Awesome.
We have time for one more question.
Not a question, but I recently rewatched Gremlins 2 and it still bangs.
Oh my gosh, amazing. I have to do it.
Yeah.
Yes, I highly recommend the skit on YouTube. Has anybody seen it? It's so good. You should watch it. It's good.
How do we search for this?
It's Jordan and Peele. Is that what?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And then that's the funny thing too, right? Is it Jordan and Peele the name of the thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I never knew about these people. Everybody else knows about these people. I didn't. I found them through Gremlins too. Yeah. There you go. See, I'm totally clueless. But then I'm like, oh my gosh, who are these brilliant people that I never heard before? And I found them through Gremlins too.
They had a show and then for a couple of seasons. But,
Yeah.
All right, so everybody, after you read Craft.
Yeah.
Key and Peele, Gremlins 2.
Exactly.
If you
So
do
good.
one thing after
So
reading
good.
But read the book first, because you won't be able to
There
appreciate
you go.
the
There you
skit
go.
unless you read the entire thing
Nice.
at least twice. So, okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Can we get some applause?
We give one more hand for Ananda.
Okay. Now, if anybody is up for a picture, if you don't like a picture, just hide yourself.
Behind a copy.
Yes. Or you can like just, okay, let me see. Okay. Okay.
Oh, you're gonna be in it.
Okay, they're all gonna be in it. Okay. Is everybody seeing themselves?
Yeah. No.
Yes? Amazing.
Gremlins 2 is the one with the really glamorous, like, blonde.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes. Like, hot gremlin.
First one had no hot gremlin.
Excuse
Thank
me,
you
they're all
both
hot.
so much. I'm so glad to have you here. Jon, thank you for reading so closely and coming up with these great questions. And Ananda, thank you for writing this book and sharing it with us. This has been a total pleasure. I'm really glad to have you in San Francisco. Thank you all for joining us too. I think ordinarily I'd set you in one place to sign books, but I'm going to let you mingle.
Awesome.
I think that makes sense.
Thank you so much.
I'll be brief. I'm just here to let you know. We have books at the front register. You can find them there. If you'd like Ananda to sign them, you can come up and say hi and do the thing. And also, once again, Jon's books are available for pre-order. And those too. The book is called Big Cheap. If you have any other questions, let me know. And if not, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.